London, late July, 1865. A charwoman named Sophia Bishop has been paid to prepare a body for burial. The man on the bed died days earlier of dysentery, an intestinal infection that drains the body of water until the heart gives out. Bishop has done this work before. She folds back the sheet and begins to wash him. Then she stops. Because the body in front of her belongs to Dr. James Barry, Inspector General of Hospitals, one of the most senior medical officers in the British Army, and it is not the body of a man. This is his case file. To understand why that discovery mattered, you have to understand who James Barry had been. For 50 years, Barry was a soldier and a surgeon of the British Empire. He trained at Edinburgh, joined the army in 1813, and never left it. His postings read like a map of the empire itself. Cape Town, then Mauritius, then Trinidad, and after that, wherever the army's hospitals were worst. Everywhere he went, he made enemies. He was small, sharp-tongued, and quick to fury, and he fought at least one duel over it. And everywhere he went, the conditions improved. Cleaner water, better food, separate wards for the dying, and humane treatment of prisoners, lepers, and the insane. Decades before any of it became policy. By the time he died, Barry had risen to Inspector General of Hospitals, one of the highest medical ranks the army could give. None of the men who gave it to him knew what Sophia Bishop was about to find. The story does not begin with James Barry. It begins with a child recorded at birth as Margaret Ann Bulkley, born in Cork, Ireland, around 1789. The Bulkleys were not comfortable for long. Margaret Ann's father went to prison for debt, and the family's money went with him. What the family did have was a connection. Her uncle was James Barry, a celebrated painter and member of the Royal Academy in London. When the elder James Barry died in 1806, he left behind more than paintings. He left a name and a circle of radical friends, men interested in ideas the age refused to entertain, including the education of women. Among them was Francisco de Miranda, a Venezuelan general living in exile in London, raising money and men for a revolution against Spanish rule. He kept a large library, and Margaret Ann Bulkley was allowed to read in it. Whether the ambition came before the plan or after it, the record does not say. What it holds is a line from a letter to her brother. Had she not been a girl, she wrote, she would have been a soldier. A soldier she could not be. The army would have meant barracks, shared quarters, a body inspected on enlistment. The disguise would not have survived a month. Medicine was different. A university examined what a student knew, not what a student was. It took the fee, set the papers, and granted the degree to whoever passed. And the work that came after could be done at arm's length from the body. A doctor examines others and is never examined in return. Of every door closed to a woman, medicine was the one a disguise could pass through and keep working behind for a lifetime. So Miranda and David Stuart Erskine, Earl of Buchan, a patron of women's education, proposed the way through. Qualify under a man's name, then follow Miranda to Venezuela and practice openly as a woman. In December 1809, a slight young man named James Barry enrolled at the University of Edinburgh Medical School. He was small, beardless, and younger looking than the men around him, and he kept to himself. Across 3 years of anatomy theatres and shared dissection tables, no one worked out what he was. When the suspicion finally came, it was not the truth. The University Senate, reading the slight frame and unbroken voice, decided this smooth-faced student was a boy too young to sit his examinations. The Earl of Buchan wrote to the authorities and pointed out that the regulations set no minimum age. Barry was allowed to sit. He graduated in 1812. The thesis was on hernia, written and defended in Latin, and dedicated to 2 men, Miranda, and the Earl of Buchan. Miranda was in a Spanish cell by then and would die in one in 1816. The escape route closed. The borrowed name became the only name. There was one direction left. Barry spent 6 months as a pupil at St. Thomas's in London, passed the Royal College of Surgeons, and in July 1813 was recruited into the army, first to the military hospital at Chelsea, then to Plymouth, then abroad. The board that admitted him examined his Latin, his anatomy, and his references. It did not examine him. He rose quickly, and he rose by being right. He arrived at the Cape in 1816 with a letter of introduction to the governor, Lord Charles Somerset. He treated the governor's household and within 6 years was running every hospital, prison, and asylum in the colony as colonial medical inspector. It was an extraordinary post for an officer of his junior rank. Barry lived at the governor's residence for a time and was described by others as his constant companion. On the 1st of June, 1824, a placard appeared in Cape Town, posted where the town could read it, accusing Lord Charles Somerset and Dr. Barry of a sexual relationship. The law called it sodomy, and it carried the death penalty. An inquiry followed. The accusation was dismissed. Somerset was at that moment in an open fight with the colony's printers over censorship, and the charge was read as political. The town had been watching Barry closely enough to invent a scandal. It had watched the wrong thing. Barry was careful in ways that now read as a system. He kept his own quarters and refused to share them. A manservant travelled with him for decades. He would not be examined by other doctors, even when he was dying, and he left instructions that his body be buried in the sheets he died in, unwashed, unexamined. But Barry did more than hide. In Cape Town, the work outran the concealment. In 1826, a woman named Wilhelmina Munich went into an obstructed labour, the kind that, in that era, killed nearly every mother it touched. Barry performed a Caesarean section, cutting through the abdominal wall and the uterus to deliver the child directly. Both the mother and the baby lived. It was among the first operations of its kind, on record, in which both survived. Wilhelmina named her son James Barry Munich after the surgeon. The name would be carried down the generations. A future Prime Minister of South Africa would bear it. Reform of this kind made powerful enemies, because reform meant telling powerful men they were wrong. Barry accused officials of corruption and condemned the filth of military hospitals to their faces. In the Crimea, he confronted Florence Nightingale herself over the treatment of soldiers in the open street. Nightingale never forgot it, and later described him in terms that left no doubt about her contempt. The temper, the isolation, the refusal to be touched. Historians now read these not only as character, but as defense. Every close inspection was a risk. Every friendship was a distance carefully kept. For 50 years, one exposure, a doctor's hands, a soldier's suspicion, a single careless moment would have ended not only the career, but the freedom. It never came. Barry controlled it to the end. He served until 1859, when failing health forced him onto half pay. He came home to London, and in July 1865, in a rented room, the infection finished what 50 years of scrutiny never had. Why was a deception this complete even possible? Identity in the early 19th century was asserted, not verified. There were no photographs, no fingerprints, no records cross-checked between institutions. A man was who his papers and his bearing said he was, and Barry had the papers, the training, and the nerve. The army did inspect bodies, but only the bodies it was buying labour from. Enlisted men were stripped and examined on enlistment. Medical officers were not recruits. They were commissioned professionals, and the board that commissioned them assessed a degree, an examination, and a set of references. Barry had all three. There is no record of a physical examination at Barry's entry, and no evidence that one was required, which leaves the position itself. A surgeon is the man who examines. For 50 years, Barry held the one job in the army that made it his hands on other people's bodies, and never the reverse. The body was the only remaining evidence, and Barry kept it out of view. Rank made that easier. A senior officer could demand a privacy that a junior one could not. So the higher Barry rose, the safer the secret became. Because power in that army came with the right to be left alone. There is a second mechanism here, and it is quieter. Barry's reforms were not a distraction from the disguise. They were made possible by it. As a man, Barry could command a hospital, overrule an official, and force through a change no woman of the period would have been permitted to propose. The clean water, the separated wards, the care for the poor and the imprisoned, every one of them reached patience because the army believed a man had ordered it. The disguise did not only protect Barry, it carried the work. The story did not stay quiet. Within weeks, London newspapers were printing the claim that the famous army surgeon had been a woman. The charwoman, Sophia Bishop, had by some accounts tried to sell her silence first and been refused. The army's response was to close the door. Barry's records were sealed and kept from public view for roughly 100 years. When they were finally opened in the 20th century, they confirmed the outline of the life and resolved almost nothing about the person who lived it. No one was punished because no crime had been named. Barry had not stolen, had not defrauded, and had practiced medicine well for decades. The only irregularity was the body that had done it. The reforms outlived the scandal. The insistence on clean water and humane care, once radical, became ordinary medicine, and the name given to a child in Cape Town survived into the next century. What the record cannot settle is the simplest question of all. Historians still divide over whether James Barry was a woman living as a man to practice medicine, or a man the records happen to call a woman. The documents show a life. They do not show the person inside it. For 50 years, the British Army trusted James Barry with its hospitals, its soldiers, and its dying. It never thought to ask who it was trusting. And when the answer finally came, it came from a charwoman with a body to wash. One question for the comments. The army sealed Barry's file for 100 years. What do you think they were protecting? The next case on this channel, a 19th century American physician invents a disease to explain why enslaved people ran from captivity. Subscribe, and the next file opens for you first. This is the sealed ward.